On October 10th, President Trump made a surprising move. He sharply criticized the Chinese Communist Party for trying to dominate the world and condemned their sinister actions. He also hinted at canceling a planned meeting with President Xi Jinping during the upcoming APEC summit in South Korea, suggesting that he might significantly raise tariffs on China and take other countermeasures. The world was shaken by these remarks. "They're becoming very hostile," he said. "They're sending letters to countries throughout the world, and they want to impose export controls on each and every element of production having to do with rare earths, and virtually everything else they can think of, even if it's not manufactured in China." The situation stems from the Chinese Ministry of Commerce issuing announcements on October 9th. These announced export controls on overseas rare earth items, technologies, equipment, raw materials, 5 types of medium-heavy rare earths, lithium batteries, and more. Trump expressed strong dissatisfaction, tweeting, "Nobody has ever seen anything like this, but essentially it would clog the markets and make life difficult for virtually every country in the world, especially China. We've been contacted by other countries who are extremely angry at this great trade hostility, which came out of nowhere." On the morning of October 9th, China's Ministry of Commerce issued 2 announcements. One included rare earth exports to overseas entities, stating that foreign organizations and individuals must obtain licenses to export rare earth products, technologies, or dual-use items from China. The other restricted the export of rare earth technologies, including those for mining, smelting, metal refining, magnet manufacturing, and rare earth secondary resource recycling. Some parts of these announcements took effect immediately, while others will take effect on December 1st. Trump said, "I have always felt like they've been lying in wait, and now, as usual, I have been proven right. There is no way that China should be allowed to hold the world captive, but that seems to have been their plan for quite some time. Starting with the magnets and other elements that they have quietly amassed into somewhat of a monopoly position, a rather sinister and hostile move." He added, "But the US has monopoly positions also, much stronger and much far-reaching than China's. I have just not chosen to use them. There was never a reason for me to do so until now." The letter they sent me is many pages long and details with great specificity each and every element that they want to withhold from other nations. That afternoon, China's Ministry of Commerce and the General Administration of Customs released 4 more announcements. These imposed export controls on super-hard materials like synthetic diamond micropowder, 5 types of medium-heavy rare earths, certain rare earth equipment and raw materials, lithium batteries, and artificial graphite anode materials. These measures will take effect on November 8th, just 1 day before the current US-China tariff truce expires. Trump remarked that the timing of China's announcements was especially inappropriate, as this day marked a rare moment of peace in the Middle East after thousands of years of chaos and war. He wondered if the timing was just a coincidence. Shanghai-based international relations scholar Shending Li believes that China's move to strengthen rare earth export controls may be an attempt to gain more leverage in the upcoming US-China summit at the APEC meeting in South Korea. However, Shending Li pointed out that while China currently controls 70% of global rare earth mining, countries like Russia, Ukraine, Brazil, Canada, and the US also have rare earth deposits. Additionally, rare earth technology is not particularly difficult to conquer. The US could completely rebuild its rare earth industry by fully utilizing the trillions of dollars in investment commitments from other countries and tapping into rare earth talent from other nations. Trump directly announced that he was no longer interested in meeting with Xi Jinping, saying, "Things that were routine are no longer routine at all. I haven't spoken to President Xi because there was no reason to do so. This was a real surprise, not only to me, but to all the leaders in the free world. I was to meet President Xi in 2 weeks at APEC in South Korea, but now there seems to be no reason to do so." The president added that depending on how the CCP responds to their newly issued hostile orders, that as the President of the United States, he would be forced to retaliate economically against their actions. He concluded, "I never thought it would come to this, but perhaps, as with all things, the time has come. Ultimately, though potentially painful, it will be a very good thing in the end for the USA." One of the policies that we're calculating at this moment is a massive increase of tariffs on Chinese products coming into the United States of America. There are many other countermeasures that are likewise under serious consideration. Analyst Mr. Z stated that China's rare earth retaliatory measures were not surprising. The key point and severity of the situation lie in the timing. First, President Trump's urgent push to rebuild the rare earth industry and completely break free from the CCP's hold on the supply chain is no secret. The CCP's approach is to cause as much damage as possible to Trump's government and its allies before this rare earth card becomes completely obsolete. This is the first critical time window, and it is the most fiercely contested period between the two sides. The second timing point is the new U.S. free port policy, which will begin on October 14th. This policy, designed specifically to target China, is a lethal blow to China's shipping and shipbuilding industries. The language used by China's Ministry of Commerce, such as export controls on rare earths and technologies targeting dual-use items, directly aligns with President Trump's goal of attacking China's shipbuilding industry. The third timing point is, as President Trump said, that the CCP made this move on the very day Trump achieved peace in the Middle East. In fact, Trump is very aware that the CCP's actions were not entirely about face-saving or coercion. It was genuine anger. CCP leaders are actually more enraged than Trump because the real masterminds behind the chaos in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine is the CCP. If peace is achieved in the Middle East, it would mean the CCP loses another strategic foothold. Therefore, the CCP's decision to retaliate and humiliate Trump on this particular day comes from a deep-rooted, visceral instinct. So, what is the result of completely angering Trump? A swift and fierce 100% tariff. In the afternoon, Trump posted again, stating, "The CCP plans to impose large-scale export controls on nearly all products starting November 1st. This will affect all countries with no exceptions," saying that it will affect all countries, and that it was a plan devised by them years ago. Trump criticized the move, calling it almost unprecedented in international trade and a moral disgrace in Beijing's dealings with other countries. He added that due to the CCP stance, the U.S. will implement an additional 100% tariff on Chinese products starting November 1st, on top of the existing tariffs. The U.S. will also impose export controls on all critical software. He further stated that if the CCP takes additional actions, the U.S. may accelerate the timeline for imposing tariffs and export controls. Trump stated, "It's impossible to believe that China would have taken such an action, but they have, and the rest is history." Analyst Mr. Z said the second half of the U.S.-China trade war has officially begun. While the CCP's actions may seem sudden, they were actually foreseen. On October 9th, the same day China announced its rare earth retaliatory policies, the U.S. Department of Transportation proposed banning Chinese airlines from flying over Russian airspace on flights to and from the U.S., arguing it creates unfair competition for American airlines. This proposal targets Chinese airline flights to the U.S., which currently use Russian airspace to shorten travel time and reduce fuel costs. In contrast, U.S. airlines must take longer routes, known as the Blue Route, to reach the same destinations. U.S. airlines pointed out that this gives Chinese airlines an unfair advantage, and the Department of Transportation agreed. The proposal, however, would exempt cargo flights. The final order could take effect as early as November, with Chinese airlines having 2 days to respond. This could affect airlines like Air China and Eastern China Airlines, though it is unclear if Hong Kong-based Cathay Pacific will be impacted. On the same day, the U.S. Senate passed a bipartisan bill requiring chip makers NVIDIA and AMD to ensure U.S. companies receive priority access to semiconductor products over CCP-owned companies, incorporating it into the annual defense policy bill. Additionally, according to the Financial Times, China has also strengthened its import restrictions on U.S. semiconductors, including NVIDIA processors and any advanced semiconductor products violating U.S. export controls. Previously, the CCP had ordered Chinese tech companies to stop purchasing NVIDIA products and cancel existing orders. Earlier reports indicated that from May to July, at least $1 billion worth of NVIDIA's top AI chips were smuggled into China for sale. U.S. soybeans have become a critical tool for China in undermining Trump's image and voter support. During the trade war, China turned to South America for soybean supplies, causing U.S. farmers to lose billions of dollars in revenue. The U.S. government is actively seeking alternative buyers for soybeans beyond China. The U.S. soybean trade delegation recently visited Nigeria. According to the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria, the delegation met with Nigerian importers and soybean processors in June to boost trade, aiming to expand the 64,000 tons of soybean imports from Nigeria in 2024. In August, the delegation also attended the U.S. Soybean Association's graduation ceremony, which involved aquaculture, where soybeans can be used as fish feed. In August, Illinois hosted agricultural buyers from Peru, Colombia, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic for their annual farm and crop facility tours. This year, U.S. soybean exports to Bangladesh saw a significant increase, reaching just over 400,000 tons. Exports to Vietnam, Egypt, Thailand, and Malaysia also grew, though the total amount of U.S. soybean exports is still down 8% compared to last year, at 18.9 million tons. In September, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins stated on social media that Taiwan has committed to purchasing $10 billion worth of U.S. agricultural products over the next 4 years. This includes soybeans. She called this commitment a game changer. The U.S. exported $3.8 billion worth of agricultural products to Taiwan. On October 1st, President Trump said that if he met with President Xi Jinping, soybean trade would be a major discussion topic. However, it now seems unlikely that the meeting will happen, and China's soybean leverage is quickly losing its impact. What the CCP can't tolerate the most is President Trump's comprehensive counterattack against China's infiltration on the covert front. Historically, China has never fully defeated its enemies on the battlefield. Major victories were achieved through infiltrators and spies within enemy ranks. Trump is clearly very aware of this. Since returning to the White House, Trump has continued to strike hard at Chinese operatives and agents infiltrating the U.S. The latest case was on October 8th, when the U.S. State Department confirmed the dismissal of a senior diplomat who admitted to having a romantic relationship with a Chinese woman accused of ties to the CCP. This is the first case of a violation leading to dismissal under the U.S. State Department's blanket ban on romantic or sexual relationships between U.S. diplomats and Chinese nationals, which went into effect in January 2025. The policy, proposed by then U.S. Ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, applies to all U.S. diplomats in China, their families, and contractors with security clearance. It covers U.S. embassies and consulates in Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenyang, Wuhan, and Hong Kong. The U.S. State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott stated in a press release that the department has officially removed the diplomat from their position, citing the results of an internal review which revealed that he admitted to concealing a romantic relationship with the Chinese nationals who had known ties to the CCP. The statement noted that the unnamed diplomat confessed on camera that his Chinese girlfriend might be a spy, and also mentioned that her father was an unabashed Communist Party member. Pigott emphasized that, under Secretary of State Marco Rubio's leadership, the U.S. has a zero-tolerance policy for employees who jeopardize national security. He added that this was their first case of a dismissal based on a Trump executive order. While the incident did not attract excessive attention internationally, it stands as one of the most embarrassing and damaging blows to the CCP. Analyst Mr. Z commented that China's rare earth retaliatory measures were actually a desperate move after being cornered by the U.S. He suggested that the CCP may have believed with a bit of luck that Trump wasn't a dictator and faced pressure from Congress and business circles, making him unwilling to leave the negotiation table. However, the intense counterattacks that followed have already proven that the CCP misjudged the situation once again. The Wall Street Journal stated that if the summit is cancelled, it will be a setback for Xi Jinping, as his goal is to continue engaging with Trump to manage bilateral relations. Internally, Xi Jinping has already defined U.S.-China relations as a long-term struggle. Craig Singleton, a senior fellow at a Washington think tank, posted on X that Beijing may have overplayed its hand. What China saw as leverage, Trump saw as betrayal, and that miscalculation could mark the beginning of the end of the tariff truce. Chinese affairs expert Miles Yu posted on X that Trump's response caught the CCP off guard. Yu, who served as the chief China advisor at the State Department during Trump's first term, wrote that the U.S. and China have completely different views and objectives regarding the summit. Trump hopes to address specific issues with China, while Xi Jinping aims to use the summit to reshape the U.S. approach to China. Yu explained that the CCP's familiar strategy for summits is to escalate tensions first and then offer cooperation as a solution. In the past, the CCP has used tactics like intercepting U.S. planes, intimidating Taiwan, and harassing ships in the South China Sea to create tension, only to later extend a diplomatic olive branch to the U.S. He wrote, "It's a strategy born not out of statesmanship, but of Leninist manipulation. China raises the temperature, then extends a diplomatic olive branch to an anxious Washington." Yu believes that the CCP leader is now trapped in the dilemma he created for himself. For President Xi, the summit with the U.S. president is crucial. It's not about diplomacy, it's about survival. Mr. Xi stated that the most tragic aspect for Xi Jinping and the CCP leadership is their constant delusion that the world will always be deceived by them, believing that they're invincible. The saddest part is that they still don't understand who their real opponent is. They started studying Trump when he first appeared, but to this day, they still don't understand his beliefs or where his bottom line lies. However, they will soon see the consequences of crossing that line.